Today, our daily Bible reading is the final chapter of the Gospel of John, John chapter 21. And while it probably didn't happen, I'd like to try to imagine what occasioned the addition of chapter 21. And I'd like to imagine a conversation between an older apostle Peter and an older apostle John, where John shares with Peter, hey, I've written a gospel and shared about what Jesus did. And Peter read it or heard it and said, hey, you never talked about how Jesus and I got reconciled and how he forgave me and how he commanded me to feed his sheep. And I feel like I can imagine John saying, oh, yeah, I should probably add that story. And that's how we got John chapter 21. Again, I'm just using my spiritual imagination and saying that. But I can imagine that being the occasion, because there is a dynamic between Jesus and Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved, who we believe to be John, that we see in John chapter 21. And if you look at, it starts with basically a picnic on the beach and the risen Christ grilling fish and having breakfast with the disciples. And then when they finish breakfast, starting in verse 15, we have this back and forth between Jesus and Simon Peter about, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my lambs. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. And then a third time. And clearly this is to be, if you will, an echo or a reverberation of Peter's threefold denial of Jesus on the night of his betrayal, and now this threefold affirmation of his love for Jesus, and Jesus telling him to feed my sheep, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. He's got a job to do. So Jesus really specifically tells Peter, you've got a job to do. Feed my sheep, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. And then he says to him a warning, when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will place a belt around your waist and take you where you do not wish to go. And John says in verse 19, he said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this, he said to him, follow me. So that's the command on Peter. Follow me until you die. And then in verse 20, Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved and said, Lord, what's going to happen to him? That's our verse of the day in verse 21. When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, Lord, what about him? And Jesus said to him, if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? And then Jesus repeats, follow me. And I just want to leave you at the end of John's gospel that John is strongly pleading with us, focus on following Jesus. Don't worry about somebody else. Don't get into, well, what aboutism? What about him? What about her? What's going to happen to them? Don't worry about that. Jesus says very clearly to Peter, follow me. That is his plea at the end of John's gospel for each and every one of us. Don't worry about someone else. You're not responsible for them. You are responsible for your own personal and spiritual life. Use it to follow Jesus.